I'm so happy to be here in Hamburg. I used to live here. I don't anymore. I live in San Francisco, California. It's been like 12 years, but I'm glad to be back. I'm also back for like 12 hours, so I'm a little bit jet lagged. I did get some sleep, but yeah, always good to be home in my hometown. Awesome to have this event here. All right. So again, my name is Malte. I'm the CTO Vercel. I heard there was people wondering what Vercel is or not. I don't know. We help people ship the best products. So this is not a talk about Vercel, just so we're clear. But it is I like giving meta talks. So it's a talk about our journey, and that as an example for maybe the journey that some of your companies can do at the same time. And maybe we can help you along the way. What we do is we make JavaScript frameworks, which is exciting. And then we built the infrastructure to help you operate the applications that you build with them. All right, again, that's for the meta context. I think it's fair to say that AI is going to change software very broadly, right? And that's both true for developers and for end users. So I think many of you will probably be using, I don't know, Copilot. Maybe you're like super hip and using Cursor. You probably used ChatGPT and you had that moment yourself where you're like, wow, this is actually great, right? Like my world has changed, right? I was there in 2007 when the iPhone was released. And it felt very similar, but if you actually think back, that was so slow. Like, no one had a phone. Everyone had to buy one. It was expensive. And Android didn't even really launch until 3 years later. So it was like this super slow transformation. Now we have this big transformation where ChatGPT gets like 100 million users in 3 months. And it's accelerating at the same time. So that was the GPT-3 era a couple years ago. We then came to the GPT-4 era, and that's really interesting in that we now have multiple frontier models. Frontier models are the best models out there. It's not just OpenAI. We have Google with Gemini. We have Anthropic building Claude. And super relevant is Llama 3.1 from Meta. It's the only open weight model. Open weight means you can download it, you can put it on your own $100,000 GPU and run it yourself. Or, I don't know, ask someone else. But it's obviously exciting that it's just out there and you can do that. The next phase, just last week we had OpenAI launch O1. It's a reasoning model. It's very slow. But I actually give credit to the Claude model. They innovated on this notion of chain of thought prompt, where the model kind of thinks about what it should do, and then it iterates through that, and it gets to better outcomes. And you can do that today. And obviously, things are only going to accelerate further in the future. And I think it's worth calling this a disruption, right? And it's worth thinking about what a disruption is. So a disruption is when the world changes. It could be for the better, for the worse. It could be good for you. It could be bad for you. It could be invariant, orthogonal to you. Who knows, right? But the space changes. And like our position in this space might be different than it used to be. And the space is disrupted, and we have to find our location in it. And this is where the talk gets a little bit meta, because we, as Vercel, went through this disruption, right? We just heard about the fallacies of getting VC money. We have a couple $100 million in the bank. It's 2023. The world is disrupted. We don't do AI. Shit. What are we going to do? We have to find our place. And I'm very happy, very proud, actually, that we found the answer that feels super native to us, right? So again, I mentioned already, we make JavaScript frameworks, we operate them. What should we do? So obviously, there's an AI world. Let's make the AI SDK. Let's make a framework for building JavaScript applications. Super obvious answer, right? But it feels native to us, because that's what we do anyway. And then obviously, everyone's like, OK, cool. I can prompt this thing, and it does whatever I want. Can it make web applications? And we asked ourselves that. And that's V0, right? So we built this application that just makes you websites from a prompt. Again, that feels really native to what our company should do. And in this talk, I hope to give you a bit of a roadmap how to think about your business to transform yourself in a similar way that feels native to what you're doing. And to talk about that, we have to talk about the AI engineering revolution. Things have changed. There was Software 1.0 era. Before joining Vercel, which now has been 2.5 years, I was at Google for 12 years, 11 years, whatever, something like that, very long time. And in 2007, if you would ask me what's the most important thing that you're doing, I would have probably answered AI. But I think probably many here in the room wouldn't have given the same answer, right? It wasn't quite there. We were in a different phase, right? At that phase, we would build things in Python. Why? Not because that's the right programming language to do it. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with Python. But the reason why it's used in AI is because universities use it. And at that stage, AI was a research topic. When I wanted to build something, I had to build the infrastructure first to do it. I would build a really small model because it was purpose-built for this one thing. I had to start with training, and that training would take a while. And maybe I'm inventing a new technique along the way, so I get to ship a research paper. Great. Doesn't really help me with my business, but it works, right? So we're now quarters in, years in, and we have barely anything to show for. And really, there were like thousands of engineers worldwide who would do this, right? Like a tiny number of people. Everyone else is writing normal software. And this has truly changed. Now, we're probably using TypeScript because that's great. But whatever you use, it doesn't matter, but you choose. We're thinking from the front end first because what really matters is the user experience. Who cares about how the AI is implemented? In fact, we're calling it as a service. We're using large foundation models that are so smart that we don't have to purpose train them for every single use case. We can just prompt them. We can tell them what we want them to do, and then maybe think about training later. And that enables us to ship products, which is kind of what we want to do, in days or weeks. And really, everyone can be such developers. Just to reemphasize this, AI used to be for the few of us with PhDs. And now, really, everything you need to be able to do is like you need to call an API. Everyone here can call an API. That's what we do every day. And the best thing about it is that it's really easy to get started, and then you can learn as you go. That's technology at its best. You don't have to, take 6 months of deep research to get anything done. Now, you might think, there's these powerful AI companies, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft. They're going to just own this space, and there's no place for me. But I think that's just wrong. But you need 3 things. You need exclusive data, you need a feedback cycle, and you need to be in a complicated domain. Now, especially in GDPR country, everyone will say, oh, I actually don't have any exclusive data because I don't store it. But that's not true. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're an elevator company, and you probably have a manual that you don't publish on the internet because it's super complicated, and you only give it to your technicians. But the AI is smart, and it can eat that menu and actually transform it to something that a normal user might understand. So you have exclusive data. Maybe you have an online store, and you do have the user's purchase history, but you're not going to give it to OpenAI, and you're not going to, but you are probably willing to use it in your own AI operations. So you have something that's yours and enables you to do something better than everyone else. I'll show you how to do a feedback cycle. Everyone can have it. Most important point is the complicated domain. I've been in software engineering for, and I don't like to admit it, about 30 years. And every single time I looked at a problem, it seemed easy at first, and it turned out to be really interesting and really complicated, right? So everyone has a complicated domain. Selling stuff online is complicated. Booking travel is complicated. Making cars is very, very complicated, right? And the general AIs don't know how to do that stuff. Well, I'll show you how to do it. Cool. I was mentioning AI comes from the world of research, which means there are fancy words like prompt engineering. I already mentioned this one. Fine-tuning, RAG, and evals. I'll teach you what they are really quick. prompt engineering is really just being more precise in what we like the AI to do. If you've used ChatGPT, you've prompted it, right? You can professionalize that, but not like in a crazy way. It's very incremental, getting better at it. One of the techniques is that you just give the AI a few examples of what the work adjacent to what you want to do look like and how it would do a good job. It immediately does a better job. So there's really not a lot of science to this, and this gets you very, very far. I think when we first learned about fine-tuning, it sounds like something like that sounds great. I want to do that. What it is you extend some existing AI model with your own examples. They're specific to your application. And this sounds cool. That sounds like something that's really helpful. But it's really actually not something you need on day one. And I'll show you later when to and how to maybe employ it. But its primary use case is to actually adjust kind of the form of the answers. It's not the way to get new knowledge into the model. You probably use AIs, and they kind of know things, or they think they know things. But that's not the right way to get data into them, because fine-tuning still takes hours, maybe even days. So you can't get real-time data that way into the AI. And it also doesn't even work that way. The way you do that is through RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And let me translate that to English. It's search. So RAG is just search. Imagine you have a prompt, and you need some data. So you put that prompt into a search engine and ask your own proprietary search engine to give you documents or data that's related to that prompt. That's really all there is to it, and it really enables the AI to use that data to then fulfill the answer. Now, if you've heard about this before, you might conflate RAG with vector search. And if you don't know what vector search is, don't worry about it. You don't have to use it. I think this is actually kind of a misconception. So I don't know, if you're let's say in e-commerce, you probably have some service like Agolia in your store. That's a perfectly fine way to do RAG, right? So you just need a search engine that helps you on the back end to find relevant data for your query. But it might also just be that you query your SQL search engine. It's just a program you write, right? You get a prompt and you try to figure out what would be the data that would help the AI to fulfill this task, and then you give it to the AI as part of the prompt. Now, I mentioned how this is actually all kind of somewhat easy. One of the hacks why it's so easy is that I was mentioning RAG is just search, and in search we have two problems. We have the problem of recall, which is to find all the docs that are kind of related. But then we have the problem of precision, which is we don't want any false positives. And in the traditional search, if you give it to a user, here's 10 answers, and 5 of them are wrong, that's really a problem, right? So you need precision to be really high, but then you might also miss some because you're not so sure, right? One of the magic of these really smart models is they can actually figure out that this overly optimistic search engine give you a little bit too much data, and it just discards the bad data. So again, this is actually really easy to build applications with this. Cool. So with RAG, we now have a way to put your exclusive data into the AI. Again, you get the prompt, or you write the prompt, you query your own proprietary search engine, your database for the data, you put it in the prompt, you put the AI to work. Yeah, because you have data that the big LLMs don't have, right? Again, you will not give your user data to OpenAI. So it's almost unfair. They cannot compete with you, right? Because they don't have the data. You have the data. Awesome. Final word we have to learn is evals, which I will translate as unit tests for AI. There's a conflict in AI I think the founding belief of software engineering is that software is deterministic, right? You have a function, you put something in, you get something out. You can write a unit test for it. Great. You can change the function. Unit test still passes. Great. Unit test fails. Also great. That's the point, right? It's not so easy with AI because these APIs literally have a temperature argument, and you cannot really make it do something deterministic. And then also your input space of all the things a user might ask, a user might want to do is infinite, right? So you can't really test it. So you need something new, and that's what evals are. But they are in this kind of progression of testing. I was actually looking up when automated testing was invented. Turns out it was in the 50s. But I think we forgot about it in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And extreme programming brought it back in the early 2000s. But it's been around forever. Obviously, stuff like visual regression testing. They are already, you kind of run into these problems where like they're kind of flaky because the world's complicated. And evals are more like that. At Vercel, we use a software called Brain Trust, which helps us automate this in some way. And so you can really think about it. The way an eval works, you put a prompt, and then you write out either manually or from past examples where it worked well, this would be a good answer. And then a software like Brain Trust, but there's competitors, will then use AI to score how well the AI did. And while that sounds a little bit recursive, it's much easier for an AI to say, no, this was actually a really good job, than it was to do the job in the first place, right? And so that's why this actually works really well. So you really think about it, it's kind of like unit tests, it's kind of like an automated test, but it works. And it can put you into a cycle that allows you to optimize your application. So we're starting at the top right, we're building something. And I was mentioning the beauty of AI is you actually get something working really quickly. And then you do a vibe check, right? Like you shouldn't like ask other people how it's doing. Hopefully you like it, right? You just check it out. But as you do that, it becomes really tedious to start checking all these special cases, all these use cases, right? So you want to automate tests. So you run an eval, right? And hopefully that works. And now you can maybe optimize it. You find a problem. 3 days later, do another eval, and then you ship, right? So that's the cycle. It's the same cycle as all software engineering was. You just kind of replace the evals with, or the testing with evals. And this can kind of put you into somewhat of a longer cycle. So again, I mentioned it's so nice in AI that it's so easy to get something working. But it's working, but expensive. And expensive actually means two things. It means it might be 50 cents for one shot. You probably cannot afford that, right? It might also take, I don't know, 60 seconds. And no user wants to wait that long, right? But it works. And I think working is magic, right? And so maybe you can stomach the cost, and it's not that slow, and so you just ship it. Because shipping is awesome, right? And once you ship it, you can then start collecting proprietary data from those users that use it. And then you start prompt engineering. One of the nice things about the modern AI models, they usually come in 3 steps. There's the super expensive frontier model, middle tier, and a low tier. So you ask yourself, can I make the middle tier model do as well on my task as the super expensive one? And you do it, for example, by prompt engineering. Maybe you put more examples or more rack data into that prompt, because that model isn't quite as smart, so it needs a little bit more help. You do that, but now you need to know, does it actually work? Right? Does it do as well? And so you run an eval. And if the eval tells you, yeah, you're actually just as good as before, you ship. You collect more data. Now, I think your business is profitable. Still could be faster, right? So you're saying, can I go to the lowest tier model? And maybe now is the time to fine-tune. You also collected all these examples of your expensive AI doing really well. And you can now use these generated examples from the expensive AI to fine-tune the lowest tier model. Now, maybe that works, maybe that doesn't work, but you have the eval to tell you, once you're done, you ship. So that's the feedback cycle that we need to walk through to make viable AI businesses, because just getting started on the frontier model isn't quite viable. It's too expensive. All right. So let's talk about the AI SDK. Again, this is our answer for what should the framework company do in the AI space, make a framework. And by the way, it's made in Germany. Lars Grammel, who lives in Berlin, works on this full-time, is the person who created it and is actively maintaining it. I really recommend following him on Twitter, as he posts every day how they're iterating like crazy on this thing. Anyway, you don't have to use it, but it's a good way to demonstrate how it actually looks to call an AI. The AI SDK has a function called generate text. And you give it a model, you give it a prompt, what is love, and you get text back. That's it. If you know how to call this function, you're an AI engineer. There you go. Now, this isn't yet super smart. And I was talking about like complicated domains. When humans discovered tools, we kind of got superpowers, right? I don't know, stones and shit. LLMs can call tools as well. And really what that means, because it's tool is such an like abstract word, you write a function and you give it to the LLM. And because it's smart, it can call your function. And that can either like get it more information or kind of make a change to the world. So the code looks a little bit more complicated now, but it's not like complicated, right? So the same generate text function as before, and it gets tools. The tool here is called getWeather, because the AI has no idea what the weather is, right? So you describe it, you say, OK, I need a location. There's a function called execute that figures out the weather. In this case, just calls math random. And there's a prompt. So the prompt is, what's the weather in Paris? And so the AI says, well, I have no idea, but I have a tool called getWeather. So I'm going to call it, and I'm going to present the answer from the tool. And again, like you can imagine that in your complicated domain, you probably can provide tools that are very effective in solving problems. All right. So we know now that LLMs can call your JavaScript functions. Now, not everyone in this room is a front-end developer, but like you probably heard about React, and that's what we kind of mostly use. And a React, which is like the most popular way of making UI, like the components, they're just functions, right? And so what if the LLM can call your React components? Which in fact it can. And it's really, really powerful because it connects all the investment you made into building great user experiences for your complicated domain to the AI. I'll give you an example that's hopefully very convincing for why this is important. Imagine you have a chatbot on your airline website. In fact, this morning I was on the Lufthansa website and used their chat, and it didn't work. But anyway, let's say I would like to change my seat selection to window seat. And the AI says, absolutely, no problem. Would you like to sit in 14C, 17D, 19C, 19D, 20C, 20D, 21C, 37C, 38D, or 39C? And so, yeah, so that's not a great user experience. What if instead you could just put the seat selector, right? And so you can now imagine how you can do that, right? Because you just give the AI the tool seat selector, and it's a React component. It can render it, and seeing which seats are open here is easy. Everyone already knows how to use this thing, right? It's so much better. Just really quick, you already saw this code, same code as before, and you can return React code from your tools, and then the thing gets rendered to the screen, and you have a sophisticated application. So that's how you teach your AI about your business domain components, right? Again, like I think everyone here probably works for a business that's really complicated. You thought about how to best build user experience for that company, and now you can make an AI application that happens to know about your existing UI component investment and tie them together. And once you have that, you have the entire AI engineering checklist done, right? You have exclusive data, which you feed to the AI using RAG, using a search engine. You're going through the feedback cycle using evals. And you have a complicated domain that you tie to the AI using something like the AI SDK to make them feel great together. Brings me to my hot take, which is that ChatGPT wrappers are awesome. Maybe this is just a Silicon Valley thing, but like definitely a year ago, there were so many startups, and people were making fun of them. It's like, you're just a ChatGPT wrapper, right? But no, they have exclusive data. They are optimizing a feedback cycle, and they have a complicated domain. They're actually great. I would actually say that me, myself, will admit to having made fun of people for being just a ChatGPT wrapper, but I was absolutely wrong. In fact, we were building this tool called V0. And so, again, last summer, we were, like everyone, saying LLMs are great at generating text. Web applications are just text. Why can't this thing make me a web application? So we tried it, and it didn't work. And so we tried a little bit more, and we tried to prompt engineer it. We tried to fine-tune it. And at some point, someone in the office raised their hand and was like, folks, I think I've figured it out. This thing is really good at making web pages. Take a look at my screen. And I was really excited. And so we hooked it up to like basically a normal chat interface. And it was horrible. like no one would use this, right? You could try it, but it wasn't good at helping developers. It was a great demo, right? It was the best demo I've ever seen. And so it turns out that it took us like 3 months to build a product that actually felt right, that felt like something we would be willing to show to users. Because, and you know, we're like the front-end engineering company. We have like such great designers, right? But like, it's really kind of, there's real work there, and there's real value, and this value is substantial. So don't underestimate it. Don't think like just because there's these large companies that you can't, you know, compete with them, because you actually can. I'll try to do a demo. This worked. All right. So I think this looks familiar. What should we do? Make a conference registration for code.talks attendees to use at the conference. Oh. Should I try this again? Let me see if I have internet. I have internet. There you go. So we can already see it's not ultra fast, right? But that's fine. And now it's writing the React code. It's really interesting. And here it's kind of presenting us the UI. Not sure you guys ship this right away, but I think it's kind of it's a good start. You know. And now on the left side is explaining us what it's did. Now it's not so cool yet. So let's say. Give it a retro arcade look. See how creative it is. Once again, explaining what it's doing. Writing the code. Now, it would be cooler if it would just do a diff, but here you go. It's not bad. I've actually seen it do a better job, so I think we have to give it another shot. Say the contrast is low. Make it pop more. And you know, I think what's really important to see is like, yeah, it's not super fast, and we're walking through the optimization cycles, right? But it's a good like experience that has really kind of fit with what people want to do, because it really helps you go from where you are, right? So I, for example, even though I've been in the front-end space for a long time, I'm not the best front engineer on the planet, right? So this thing can really help me, and that's really helpful. But maybe you are, right? Turns out this thing also knows how to do 3D, and maybe that's not your fortitude, right? And so it really helps you go be a better developer and really help get you from A to B, right? But it picks you up where you are, and that's been really successful. And sometimes it does better, and sometimes it does worse, but it always does something reasonable. All right, here we go. I also had a recorded demo, but I don't need it. Awesome. So you can check it out on v0.dev. It's worth checking out. It's really for you, right? Like, don't listen to me show you examples. Hopefully it can help you do something reasonable. Here are the docs for the AI SDK. But also don't look at the docs. There's examples. And what we always recommend is download the example. There's a full-blown chat application. You just download it and make it do something reasonable for your use case. And that's really all I have today. Thank you very much. By the way, me and my team will be around here. They're at the conference, so if you have any questions after this talk, super happy to answer them in person as well.
Really cool, honestly. I saw v0 before, and I think the main question I want to start with, can you do that for Vue?
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, for me, Chat.cn is only React components, right? Like, but I'm more of a Vue fanboy, so.
Let's see.
But I thought it's creating Chat.cn components based on that. That's running on Chat.cn, right?
It loves Chat.cn, but it does also do Vue.
Ah, OK.
There you go.
Nice. Maybe we have to reach out to the Chat.cn Vue community and integrate that, so it's coming. That would be cool. No,
we're like obviously like from a heritage of the company, we're very React focused. Yeah. But this thing does Vue. It's kind of early days, but we are committed to supporting as many frameworks as we can.
That would be super cool. That's honestly, when you started typing, I was like, oh, please don't do a better job than me. And
I had a version. I had a version this morning. I can maybe pick it up. That actually was kind of hot.
Oh, that is cool. Fuck.
That's AI, right? You never know. But like sometimes it does something really cool.
OK, then I have one more question, the obvious question that everyone here right now is thinking. So like, it obviously can generate that, which will accelerate our development cycles so much. And like, what do you think, where is still the place for the people in that? Like, I mean, there has been since GPT-3 came out, there's been this talk of like, oh yeah, like developers will be the first to go, blah, 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 and like, or like some of the first. But I think like from now, I didn't feel like it, like anytime I use Copilot, I'm like, yeah, that's a really awful mistake. Like not even a junior would do that. But like in other places, it's excelling. And this is the first time I felt like, that's coming for my job. Luckily, this is my job now, but I mean.
No, I mean, the reason why we call it v0 is it's because it's supposed to get you started and not do your job.
Yeah.
And as I was mentioning, I think what we've been trying to do and kind of achieving is that it hits the spot where it helps you at every level, and whenever whenever you're an expert, and you will be better than the AI. And so I think that's kind of as developers, we kind of have to find our place where we are experts in something and can do it better than the training set of the AI will be able to do.
Yeah. Is there any questions? Otherwise, we can do this for hours. OK, then maybe one more question before I go to it. Like, is it running on 01 or is it running on? OK.
No. Because no, it's running on like a large number of models, but for two reasons, it's not running on 01. A, 01 came out last week, and two, 01 is way, way, way too slow, and way, 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 way too expensive.
Yeah.
And just for an idea, when v0 came out first, it was like 66 cents a generation.
Wow.
Right? So like, you really need to, optimize things.
Yeah.
But we're not using O1. It would be prohibitively expensive.
Okay.
So, but that's also what I talked about in the talk, right? Like it's great if you can make O1 do what you need, but you can almost always, you're going to get, for example, Claude to do something as good as O1 on some specific task where you can give it more information. Like O1 will always be best for like a hard question without much guidance. But the next generation down will be able to do as good of a job if you kind of give it the information of how to fulfill the task. And if you know your domain, you can give it that information, right? You actually don't want the AI to figure it out from scratch every time because it's going to, have certain randomness in the outputs.
Yeah. Honestly, it's super cool. I saw it on Fireship. You know Fireship?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I love Fireship.
I love Fireship too. Yeah. It's honestly like a super crazy source. I tried to get him as well to code.talks, but he's very shy. Yeah. So I honestly, it's really cool. Like, I think I will definitely try it out again. I tried it out last week or something. When did it launch?
The current version launched maybe 3 weeks ago now.
Okay.
But we are on a 100 days, 100 ships marathon. 14 days in, I think.
Okay. So I think that's very cool. No one up. Yeah, microphone 1.
Hi. Yeah, I love the presentation. Thanks a lot. One thing you brought up was especially interesting to me. Like sometimes these AIs do something very cool. And do you have any advice specifically when using V0 maybe on having some consistency? Like I did something once which I liked a lot and I wanted to do it again, like similarly, because that's something which in the past sometimes I have struggled with when using these tools.
Yeah, I think, let me see if I'm like on a secret unreleased version. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So kind of the way to help with that is, and this is not going to like solve all your problem, but we, for example, will have very soon the option of creating projects, and that allows you to kind of provide information that's going to be true for every single time you work, right? And so you can just take one time and saying, okay, you don't have to guess. I'm using Next.js version 14.2. I'm using ShadCN, or maybe I'm not using ShadCN, right? I am, I like the following designs, et cetera, and so that will be supplied to every single prompt, and so you don't have to be super specific, and it will always do something that's really reasonable for your case. So that might be one technique. I think in general, it's basically making the prompts more specific, and technically also the fine-tuning stuff, but that's more big picture stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, there's more. See, just one has to start.
Thanks a lot for the nice demo. I ask myself, what is the boundary of V0 or tools like that? Because we all know that software engineering is not just a code. It's just a small part. You need maybe like we want to minimize it. You want to have CI/CD pipeline. You want to have it running somewhere with some level of scalability, depending on your needs. Sometimes maybe you need a couple of servers. Sometimes you might need like a huge amount of servers located on the different continents. So where is the boundary of this AI tool when it says, okay, now you have to decide it. You need to do this. You need to configure AWS or whatever. Yeah, this is the question.
So obviously the answer is to have CI/CD, run it on many servers and many continent is to use Vercel. But so that aside, I think I'm not sure there is necessarily boundaries, but like usually you don't start from scratch, right? And so you already have something. And so I think the next generation of AIs should get really good at doing something reasonable in the context of what you already have. I think that's actually the more important task. You know, I actually, literally with services like Vercel, obviously this is like super streamlined, but in any case, it's so rare that I'm doing something new that because we already have solutions that make it easy, or I don't want to use them, so I have opinions anyway, so I'm not going to use a tool anyway. So like then I'm just going to do it myself, right? So I think the AI is actually not going to substantially play a role there anyway. For now, certainly it's a tool to accelerate your own job, right? It's not a tool to take away the thinking part, but allows you to focus on that part.
Maybe next year.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi, Malte. Thank you for your talk. How do you iterate on the results? So I saw AI generating very good results, and then I started prompting because I want to have special features in it, something like that. And then it basically fucked it up. So is this a prototyping tool where you take then the results in your editor and start continuing development? Or are you really iterating by prompting to get better results or more features?
Yeah, so today it's very focused on the initial getting you started, and I think it's really valuable because that's sometimes the hardest part about something. We'll definitely invest in making also iteration like something that's part of the product, because that's most of what we do. We also, I don't want to actually over-focus V0 on just the UI generation part. And that's kind of also what my talk was about, right? Like, so maybe we have a few sample questions here. I mean, this is not the greatest example, calculate the factorial of a number. But this thing knows programming, right, and can write general programs for you. It knows Next.js really well. It knows Vercel really well. It has read all the Vue docs. It has read all the Svelte docs, right? And so it's actually very good at its domain as a very general purpose prompting tool. So actually, I'm probably a daily user for asking it kind of very difficult Next.js questions, because it does such a good job of surfacing from the entirety of the documentation the part that's relevant to us, and like it also ingests all the like discussions and like all this stuff. That's what I was talking in the talk about proprietary data. Like we have all this data that a general purpose LLM probably like read at some point, maybe if it was public, but I forgot about half of it and made some other shit up, right? And so we have a very focused product. So there's definitely this like very general knowledge part, but focus on the domain that we are in, which is front-end engineering.
Thanks.
Okay, we have one more question, and then we sadly have to go into the lunch break.
Yeah, my question is, are there any plans to make this full stack? Because currently I believe it's just UI components, right? And you said you're the front-end company, so maybe also more generally, how focused is Vercel on kind of making Next.js more powerful across the stack, not just front-end? Because currently I think most people, or at least my impression is most people use it for front-end, and then they have like a different back-end server. Yeah,
totally. I mean, I think when I personally say front-end, I have like a blog post about this, differentiating between uppercase front-end and lowercase front-end. Because certainly my bias from Google is a front-end is just the part of my back-end that talks to the client, but that client might be like a distributed system, right? But like here, I'm definitely talking uppercase front-end. But it's kind of, we see the world now as kind of starting with the UI. Next.js is a framework that runs server-side. We're investing heavily on that part in particular, server actions, routes, server components, and we offer integrations for databases and so forth. And so we definitely would imagine that V0 at some point would absolutely be able to use your database and to connect to your backends. But we would definitely continue to be kind of focused on this like user experience first domain. And I think there is space for someone else to solve the like how do I best make a distributed system problem, which isn't really what we do.
Thanks.
Cool. I think that's it for now. Honestly, it was so much cooler than I even imagined it, and I already from the discussion thought it was going to be really cool. Yeah, I think that's it. If no one has any further questions, Malte said that he will be around if anyone has any further questions. And yeah, I hope we get the next iteration next year.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And
enjoy lunch.
And Chat CN.
Chat CN.
Yeah.
You gotta get Chat CN from Mauritius.
Yeah, definitely next year.